So my plans for this video are to introduce variant dungeons and what they are, talk a little bit about the history of dungeons in 14, including some wholesome memories of dungeons like arf until you barf, which is a very important phrase in my past, and dungeon relevance in relics and other main content, speedrunning in dungeons, discuss current failings in dungeons and the appeal of smaller group content and harder dungeons, and future prospects, and why this is such a massive deal for Final Fantasy XIV. And I'm going to try really hard to calm my excitement for this video and to stick to my talking points outlined, because this is genuinely some of the most exciting news about upcoming content I've ever heard. This actually has me like fucking pumped. And even after a weekend of sitting on this news, we went through Canada Day. I'm Canadian, by the way, and happy 4th of July to everyone in USA. You are so like appreciated and beautiful. My point is, like, it's just, this news still has me absolutely pumped, and it is absolutely fantastic. As my initial knee-jerk reaction thought, I am so happy. First off, let's talk about what variant dungeons even are. And variant dungeons are coming to Final Fantasy XIV in patch 6.2, and many people who have hung out with me for a while have heard me talk at painful length, if I'm quite honest, about how we need something like World of Warcraft's Mythic Plus system for years now. Sit a while and listen indeed, Deckard Cain. Very well put. But put simply, Mythic Plus is simply harder dungeon content, which is exactly what variant dungeons are going to offer. Healers are going to be tested, DPS will be tested, you need to use things like interrupts, stuns, personal defensive, and more. And obviously tanks are going to be tested, because it's going to be like cooldown management, how you're going to pull mobs. It's going to be the whole gambit. It's just going to be very small group content of 4 people that is extremely challenging. Everything becomes magnified and focused in that kind of environment as well. Especially as a healer myself, my expectations on being able to juggle multiple tasks skyrockets, and my DPS matters even more. Is a full quarter, a full fourth of the team. Just everything gets magnified. But long story short, on specifically variant dungeons, from my live letter review, is variant dungeons will come in a normal story mode that is more casual than a so-called alternative path, which is going to be a bit harder with more limited revives, and then a savage dungeon mode with no revives that when you wipe totally resets the instance, and then you're on an enraged timer where everything scales up in difficulty over time. That might intimidate the shit out of some people who I know have already said that that's intimidating, but to me personally, as someone who has been craving this for so many years, that is beyond exciting and fantastic, and something that we have been, in my opinion, in dire need of in Final Fantasy XIV for years now. This has been something that I have literally gone to World of Warcraft for, because it's just like, I'm not particularly like into their raiding scene, I don't really like it, but like their Mythic Plus scene, oh my god, that's what I've gone there for. So this is fan-fucking-tastic. As a brief history of the dungeons in 14, dungeons have always been a major part of Final Fantasy XIV experience, even as far back as 1.0. They are huge hallmarks in the storyline and have been in the past intimately tied to relic weapon acquisition. Captain's Ward relics that I relic hunted for resulted in me running a theochemical research facility loving called ARF until I barfed, which gave the moniker ARF until you barf was the phrase. It was no joke, the grind was real. But let's be honest, expert dungeons are not by any stretch of the imagination requiring expertise with wall-to-wall pulls. They are frankly easy. That's why I did my 7 Reasons to Play series. I frankly cut out that footage. That's not even minorly impressive or proving much of anything to take down an expert roulette. Now, main tanking P3S and managing boss positioning to help the melees and like tilting and all that, I'd consider that more compelling footage personally. Now let's theorize for a moment. What is the spiciest, the hardest dungeon runs that we could possibly have in current Final Fantasy XIV? And I'd say playing as a healer with a tank with minimum item level, who doesn't use cooldowns, that misses aggro on some mobs yet still attempts to do wall-to-wall pulls, with DPS that refuse to use any form of utility and do extremely poor damage, like we're talking extremely poor damage, while actively running into orange damage circles when you are on healer, with everyone asking you why you're a horrible healer, asking you why you're a shitter in text chat, and why people are dying, and how much you paid for that boost. Aye mate, it's the Purchased Legend. That's my title, the Purchased Legend. But God, I knocked myself out with that one. That is horrible. You shouldn't laugh at your own jokes, right? You know what? I'm the Purchased Legend bitch. But I've played with these groups For real, so many times, and I don't exaggerate there. I have still somehow, though, come out on top most of the time. Sage's Tarkos, I have ranted and raved about how great that skill is. It is amazing. Separate Panheim with Haima and Krasis cooldowns, I have always said they're great, and they have gotten me through some real shit. I said it as soon as I got the full Sage's toolkit. This is going to be so powerful in dungeons, and 1000% I am still looking at Sage being my go-to into these dungeons. Variant dungeons, you're probably going to see me on Sage, because I literally think that this is going to be such a good fit. But I digress. Most expert roulettes are absolutely not that. They are brain off chill time. What people have done, however, to increase the difficulty of dungeons is speedrunning, where people compare times to complete dungeons, or maybe even how much they quote-unquote score in a dungeon. And this is indeed a thing that even I myself took part in for a while during Heavensward, and while extremely few people speak about it, there are actually actively speedrunning communities that have made it their goal to blow through dungeons as fast as they possibly can. It's actually a bit unfortunate that this hasn't caught onto attention. I'm actually going to make this a mainstay on my website and probably my content going into the future if I can. But of course, time is everything at this point, and working a full-time job, doing the site, doing this, what's time anymore? But talking about speedrunning though, this is something that I did with a theorochemical research facility when grinding the tomestones for Heavensward relics in the fastest possible times and pushing envelopes on Scholar and Astrologian mostly back then. Sorry, White Mage. It was just really fun. I actually really loved it a lot. Now let's talk about the appeal of genuinely harder dungeon content. This has a few talking points, probably worth their own video honestly, but cycles directly back to group sizes at the start. Getting a static of 8 people together is actually really difficult. Many people will actually flat out avoid raiding because frankly there is drama, there is a level of socialization and getting people and getting schedules sorted out and people coming and people going. Some people get a job, some people just want to like run a different form of content. They're just like, oh, you want to run like DSR? Well, screw you, I want to run UCOB. And just leading a static is genuinely a significant dedication of time in and of itself. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's a part-time job, but it kind of feels like a part-time job. One that doesn't pay and one where you eat shit most of the time, but basically that's where it's leading. Unless you are somehow blessed beyond belief like Lord above, I genuinely have tried my best to be fair, equitable, and kind to everyone. And I'm not just saying that to be biased in my own video. Like I am my own harshest critic, and even I'm like, yeah, you were really fucking nice here. Like you should have like actually like done something. I digress. But like sometimes people are just being little shits, and even in my own static this past raid tier, I've dealt with some stuff to the point where I'm burned out. You're the number 1 Rothgar? My fucking ass, bitch. I'm burned the fuck out. But I'm recruiting 2 DPS for next year, by the way. I'm still gonna raid, but damn, can people just be chill and be nice to one another? Like, it's not that hard, is it? With the way some people act, yeah, you'd think so. So to say the least, there is a huge appeal in smaller content for everyone, regardless if they're making YouTube videos or not. There's a huge amount of appeal in that. The next point is that there is a massive missing component of Final Fantasy XIV, which is anything harder that involves area of effect damage to a serious degree has been basically removed. I remember that it was Alexander's second raid that had some area of effect component to it. Actually, that was the entire raid, but it was largely area of effect raiding has disappeared since then. Even ads phases are not really AoE fights. Many players that I know flat out remove area of effect skills from their bars completely because they just don't use it. Actually, that's another topic worth a video in and of itself. Actually, I'm gonna leave that for later. I'm gonna reduce the bloat on this one some way or another, but that is a very important point. But what about the concept of how to pull mobs in dungeons and mob management? There are so many tank mechanics and strategies that are just completely thrown out to the wind, and so clearly this is a huge void in content. Now the last point that I'm going to touch on here is a group of 4 people, your actions are going to be a quarter of a party's worth, and that makes a huge difference. Absolutely in an 8-person raid your actions still do, but in a group of half the size your actions are arguably doubly important, give or take a few percentage points here and there. But a healer that is confident enough to maintain the party's health and DPS in dungeons has and always will be continuing to be one of the most powerful drivers of dungeon completion time. I mean, presuming the DPS are performing around the median level and not just completely playing like shit. There are also so many opportunities here. Interrupt, stuns, utility like slows, roots, range physical DPS, CC. Maybe casters will actually put sleep skill in their bar. Imagine that, right? That's absolutely wild to imagine. Now, to end this video on future prospects for variant dungeons, it's obviously this is the first iteration of this form of content, but you only need to look at Paths of the Dead for ideas on how this could be absolutely wild. We have things like skipping mobs that aren't needed to save time, special dungeon items and effects which were lightly alluded to for resurrections in the Another Path dungeon style. Like said before, sleeps and slows and roots as stagger packs now becomes relevant. There is, for instance, a really solid set of reasons on why Machinist is currently highly favored in Paths of the Dead for those wanting the Necromancer title. It is, ironically enough, exactly because of its utility and spike damage potential. Imagine such concepts actually mattering in relevant Savage content. That's actually kind of fucking cool. That's exciting to me. Anyhow, this video has gone on much too long and I'm at risk of fangirling over variant dungeons, so let me know if you guys like this video and want to like hit that subscribe button. I'd super appreciate that. And you know all the drills, drop, you know, variant dungeon on the like button. But I know that I'm gonna make far too much variant dungeon content in the future. I'm genuinely so thrilled about it. It's like Mythic Plus, guys, I love it. And so it's like variant dungeons, oh my god, you have no idea how excited I am. I've been asking this for literally years. I am so fucking happy right now.